two of the hottest stand-ups around right now, Sebastian Maniscalco and Bert Kreischer, both releasing movies that they are starring in on the exact same day, both having to do with their lives in a roundabout way, their stand-up routines. Let's talk about My Father and The Machine. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for two new comedy films. These are both available on demand right now. You can still catch them in theaters, but they've been out a few weeks, so they are now on demand for your streaming at home pleasure. About My Father, starring and co-written by Sebastian Maniscalco, and The Machine, starring Bert Kreischer. Both of these movies having to do with kind of things that they have pulled from their own stand-up routines and kind of their own lives as well, in hyper-realized versions, I would say. But odd that they would come out on the exact same day. They both came out Memorial Day weekend, and I don't quite get it, anymore. We get maybe 3 or 4, straight-ahead comedy films in theaters these days per year. And so it was odd to me that they both released the exact same day. But as a result, they're both now available for on-demand viewing. All right, so before I launch into my thoughts about these films, let me welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We do TV and movie reviews all the time here on the channel. That is my bread and butter, and I try to post something new just about every day for you. So lots to check out. Please consider subscribing down below there, and click that notification bell too. You'll get the alerts of when I drop new videos. If you don't want to do that, that's all right. Go ahead and click that like for me. That helps the channel out as well, or comment on this video, share it on your socials. All right, so let me, a little background here. I know who both these people are. I know less, I would say, about Sebastian. I know he is, one of the hottest comics around. Bert Kreischer, I know a little bit better because I think he's a little more present in, the entertainment world. He had his own show on Netflix. It was sort of like a reality show where he had people come to his cabin and they just sort of hung out and had conversations, and I didn't particularly care for it. But he is a very regular guest on this morning show that I podcast out of Philly called The Preston and Steve Show. Shout out to them. They just hit 25 years on the air. But Bert has been coming in there for years and years, and he is, pretty funny as a conversationalist. He's always, bringing the goods when he goes on the air there. But to be honest, he's a good storyteller, but I don't find him particularly funny in the stand-up realm. I do think this story of The Machine, which the movie is kind of based on, is very funny. He's a good storyteller. And look, he's been sort of making a name for himself for years and years and years. If you didn't know, he was the inspiration for the Ryan Reynolds movie Van Wilder, that was sort of based on a lot of things that he did himself, Bert, in college and whatnot. So he's, been around telling these great stories for a long, long time. The Machine is his most famous story, and I guess we'll sort of start there since I've already kind of been on that train here. But this is a sort of update to that story. So that story is, for all intents and purposes, real, and it happened, in the 90s and whatever. So we are flash forwarding to the present day with this movie, and there are some flashbacks as well with that. And one of the guys from the sitcom Home Economics, Jimmy Tatro, plays the younger version of Brett. I'm not sure Brett was ever that good looking. He's known for being a muscly hot guy, this Jimmy Tatro. But okay, Bert wants to put him in the role as younger Bert, sure. But most of the movie takes place in the present day, whereas the events from the story, The Machine, kind of come back to haunt Bert. And he's playing himself, stand-up comedian Bert Kreischer. And his father here is played by Mark Hamill. The two of them embark on basically a mission to, recover this watch that is part of the original story of The Machine. So that's kind of where the movie takes us. And this is an action comedy film, I would say. About My Father, let's go back to that for a second, because I'm going to really talk kind of back and forth about both at the same time. But About My Father he is playing Sebastian Maniscalco, and Robert De Niro plays his father. So both of these very, very famous men playing the patriarchs of these families. And I don't know specifically if, there's a whole lot of true-to-life stuff with this movie other than kind of the stuff that maybe Sebastian has culled from his own stand-up. Obviously, Robert De Niro is not his father, but I do get kind of the sense that a lot of the things that are talked about in terms of the family element and dynamic are true to life, kind of like Joe Coy with his movie Easter Sunday last fall, which I thought was okay. But De Niro is playing the father here, and Kim Cattrall has a supporting role, and David Rash, who I used to love on this show called Sledgehammer, I believe he just wrapped up on Succession. I think he was on that show. But we've seen him pop up in many, many things. And so they are playing the parents of Leslie Bibb's character, who is Sebastian's girlfriend, and it's sort of a meet the parents type of thing, really, which I know Robert De Niro already did, but this is more a straight ahead comedy. I don't know what you would call it, but just sort of a broad comedy, whereas The Machine is certainly more of an action adventure comedy, whereas this one more relies on kind of sight gags and pratfalls and that sort of nature. So, they're a little bit different in their approach. So from the ads, and I don't watch trailers a lot, but this was popping up a lot on like Hulu and stuff, things I would watch, that I pay for ads with. I kept seeing these commercials for About My Father, and it looked to me very corny, very hokey, doing a lot of this kind of physical comedy that seemed like it would be right at home maybe 8 to 10 years ago when they were releasing a lot of this style of comedy in theaters. But I have to admit, watching the movie, there was some of that, but they actually were some of the lesser parts of the movie. Usually in the trailer, you want to bring at least some of the best elements of your movie. And I don't think the trailer really did the movie justice in this case. I think Robert De Niro, look, he's done a lot of this type of comedy film over the last 20 years since the Meet the Parents movies. But I got some laughs out of this movie for sure. Nothing is really new here. There's a little bit of like Wedding Crashers vibe, any story really where we're seeing kind of the working class meet up with this, hoity-toity kind of family, the culture clash. It's all stuff we've seen before, but look, I like Sebastian Maniscalco. Like I said, I'm not super familiar with him other than I know that he's a very hot stand-up right now. I've seen him on, talk shows here or there or whatever, but I'm not really as familiar with his stand-up as I am with Bert's. But I thought he did a very, very good job here. And yes, I know both of these guys are just playing themselves. But to me, this was by far a better performance than Kreischer's. I didn't think, and not that he wasn't necessarily convincing as, Bert Kreischer, but it's almost like, Eminem, for example. Okay, great. He was great in 8 Mile, right? But then he never really did a whole lot of acting other than that. That's kind of how I feel here. Bert Kreischer, he's himself and he's fine as himself, but there's not really a lot of like acting here. Whenever he had to do something that kind of stretched his abilities a little bit, it fell flat for me. And as a result, since he is in just about every scene of this movie, the movie kind of fell flat. And I didn't feel that way with About My Father. And I guess I would have thought going into both of these, About My Father would have been my preferred movie, just because I have mixed feelings about Bert. Let's just say that. But the action stuff in The Machine wasn't quite compelling enough to make it a good action movie. And it definitely wasn't funny enough to be a good comedy. I laughed maybe only a couple of times in that movie. Whereas About My Father, I laughed plenty of times. And in fact, I was in a theater with, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 other people. And we were all like really, enjoying this movie and kind of getting some good laughs. We went on a Saturday night, so, good night to kind of sit back and maybe check your brain at the door and have some fun. But for me, it definitely was working a lot more in that movie. So look, neither of these movies are great, but one clearly has risen above the other one for me. I'm going to leave The Machine with a D and About My Father with a B minus. Again, if you're judging maybe by the trailer for About My Father, I think they put some of the more hokey gags, some of the more sitcom-y gags in the trailer. So I don't know. If you like Sebastian, I think that's going to be a great choice for you. And look, if you like Bert, The Machine's going to be a great choice for you as well. If you're more on the fence like I am about Kreischer and his stand-up and his persona, it might be a pass for you, as it would have been for me as well, were I not trying to review it. I don't think I would have ever watched it at all, as a matter of fact. But in any event, you can catch both of these right now on demand. I know About My Father is still in select theaters. I don't know if The Machine is as well, but either of them can be watched on demand for that small price. And I'm sure as next couple months go by, they'll both be available on streaming somewhere as well. So thank you for watching Dan Reviews It. We'll see you next time. Bye.